Hello everyone, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am the Sipping Tea, and today I'm going to talk to you all about the Cold War Premium Magach 5 Independent Premium Tank. Before I get into that, however, I just wish to issue a huge thank you once again to my two patrons, NB Hollywood and Niger898. Thank you both ever so much for your support. It really does help me continue producing content on this channel. I'd also like to give the honourable mention to my Twitch channel as well. The link for that is down in the description box below. If you haven't already clicked follow, then please do click follow on my Twitch channel, and you'll be able to watch me play some tanks completely live. We can hang out and have a bit of a chat, a bit of a chill. So, with all that being said, let's get into it. So, as is tradition, let's jump straight into the battle earn rates of the Magach 5. So, the silver earn rate will give you an additional 50%, which is quite decent. You know, it's not, once again, the highest that is in Cold War, but nonetheless, 50% is quite respectable. The tank bonus XP earn rate is 10%, and then there is the crew XP earn rate, which gives you an extra 25%. Now that is very good. So again, much like the Super M48 from last week, this tank is very much going to be right up there with the best of the crew training tanks. So I urge you to take advantage of that. The full gold cost of this tank is 12,500 gold, which is rather high. There's a lot of tanks that are very similar to this out there in Cold War at the moment, so sort of pick and choose perhaps. But 12,500, yeah, I'm not sure if I would actually pay that, I must admit. If it wasn't a free tank in the last season pass, then I probably wouldn't have gone for this. Not because it's a bad tank by any measure, as you'll see later on in this video, but more because I think that there's quite a few tanks that are very similar to it, as I just mentioned. So I'm not sure that it's really bringing too much more to the well, to your garage. You know, it's going to probably be one or two tanks that are very similar to this already. Moving on to the key statistics of the tank. So once again, starting with the penetration value. So the standard rounds offer 426mm, the premium rounds 494mm, and then the Hesh rounds 250mm. The damage of those rounds, both the premium and the standard rounds, both deal 460 alpha, and the Hesh rounds 570. The reload rate of the gun, as standard of course with no influencing factors, is 8.2 seconds, giving it a rate of fire of 7.32. The aim time is 1.8 seconds, and the accuracy is 0.34. Gun depression comes in at 9 degrees, and gun elevation comes in at 19 degrees. So overall, I'd say the gun is actually very good. The penetration is probably a little bit lower than some of its similar counterparts. They tend to come in at around 449 millimeters on the standard rounds, but nonetheless 426 millimeters with standard rounds is by no means bad. I mean, that's still quite capable. You'll likely pen the vast majority of your targets that you shoot at. Moving on to the engine statistics. So the maximum forward speed of this tank is 62 kilometers an hour with a maximum reverse speed of 24 kilometers an hour. The engine power is 908 horsepower, giving it an 18.08 horsepower per ton ratio. The fire chance for this tank, here we go, is 15%. So of course I'm going to be recommending a fire extinguisher. As you no doubt know by this point, anything that is sort of 10% and higher for fire chance on the engine, I tend to recommend a fire extinguisher. That's how I roll. You do you, of course, but I must say that 15% is way out of my comfort zone for fire rates. So yeah, if ever there was a recommendation to use a fire extinguisher, then this really is going to be it for this tank. On the screen I have included a little sort of stat sheet of this tank as I've got it set up in the garage, so you'll be able to see what the vision range and camouflage factors are. It's not really influenced too much by the equipment commanders or consumables that I have, but it's going to be a bit easier for you to, for some of you to understand, given that the camouflage factor tends to be a little bit sort of confusing. So I've had feedback from some of you. So yeah, with this little stat on the screen, I think this may well make it a little bit more familiar to you, and you know, in terms that you're more used to seeing. From there, let's move on to the consumables. So, of course, with this, the consumables that I use are going to be very familiar at this point. I have included now a graphic on the screen, but I use the premium repair kit, the standard med kit, and the standard fire extinguisher as well. So, nothing too surprising right there, I think. Once again, those of you who have watched a fair few of my videos at this point will know that that is my, well, I've referred to it previously as the Holy Trinity. It is the my go-to sort of loadout for consumables for the most part. So moving right on from the consumables, we now go to the equipment. So I've included a little graphic on the screen here as well, so you can see the equipment. So what we see here is a traction system, advanced loader, and gun stabilizer. So the main difference here from my usual sort of loadout for a tank of this type is the traction system in place of the vents. So this is where I've been sort of experimenting just a little bit with it. The traction system, what that gives is plus 10% speed and plus 10% chassis and hull rotation speed. So basically I wanted this tank just to be a little bit more nimble. There is a chance that I may well experiment with the vents in place of the traction system, as that gives plus 5% to crew performance, but so far I've found that this seems to be an equipment loadout that works. So here we move on to the armor viewer section. So the Magach 5, very similar to the M48 from last week, also has an enormous amount of very small bits of armor, mostly spaced armor. So much like last week, instead of focusing on every single last bit of the armor, you know, by calling it out, I will just show you here on the screen in a slow rotation the tank and slowly move through these different pieces of armor. So honorable mentions along the way, sort of for the more key parts of the armor perhaps. You can see that the turret has a lot of spaced armor there at 15 millimeters, which gives the majority of the turret protection, and also at the front of the tank as well. The tracks come in at 20 millimeters, the engine deck at 25 millimeters, but otherwise, yeah, we start to really see the more sort of inconsequential parts. I suppose the gun there at 45 millimeters, the main sort of rear sides of the back of the tank, and the turret at 50 millimeters. But otherwise, yeah, as you can see here, there's an awful lot of very small pieces that make up the rest of the armor. I suppose the honorable mention there of the turret ring at 76 millimeters. But you can see that these are very sort of scattered bits of armor. But overall, the armor is extremely good on the Magach 5, I think is fair to say. It just really seems to have tremendously good turret armor. So again, I'll draw a similarity to the Super M48 from last week. They are quite similar in this respect, that they do have a lot of sort of frontal turret armor. But yeah, there is the armor view of the Magach 5. I think it is actually a very, very well armoured tank, especially when you consider the maximum speed that it is capable of. So in conclusion, I would say the Magach 5 is very much worth your attention. Most of us, of course, currently have it because of last season, the level 100 reward. However, if you did manage to miss out on that season, or indeed if you're brand new to the game at the time of listening to this and you just don't have it, then if it does come up for a sale, on a sale, then I thoroughly recommend that you go for it if you don't have any other tanks that are somewhat similar to it in armor, gun, and crew XP respects. So ordinarily the gold price is of course 12,500. If you can get it at half price, then I think that really does represent a very, very good deal. That's an awful lot of tank for comparatively not a lot of money. So to the rest of us who perhaps already have the tank courtesy of the season pass, then go forth and enjoy it. I mean, if you haven't really given it much of a chance recently, then I urge you to sort of get on it. It really is a truly enjoyable tank. You can quite easily rack up the damage, as you've seen in the footage. I mean, I'm by no means a good player, but you can see that I achieve around about 5,000 damage, relatively easily. So have fun with this tank. It is very, very good. And if you do make a habit of playing it regularly, then of course it's going to reward you with training your crews that much quicker. So yeah, brilliant tank, very much worth your attention. That brings an end to the video. I want to thank you all ever so much for watching. Once again, thank you to ND Hollywood and Nagare898 for being my patrons. If any of you would wish to help support me financially, then there's a couple of links down below. One is for Patreon, where you can pledge a small amount of money every month, something like, let's say $5, something like that, relatively small amounts, but it goes a hugely long way to assisting me making these videos. So yeah, for this moment in time, I'm unable to monetize this channel, so of course each and every video that I spend, frankly, hours to make doesn't actually give me anything other than just the pleasure of making the video. It doesn't give me any monetary return. So if you can support me, then it would be hugely appreciated, and of course you would also get a shout out just like my two patrons do every single video that I make. So with all that being said, thank you ever so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.